For years, I stood as a beacon of faith in my community, a Christian pastor devoted to spreading God's word and shepherding his flock. I delivered sermons filled with conviction, urging my congregation to trust in God's plan, to lean on faith during trials, and to embrace the hope offered by Jesus Christ. People came to me for counsel, comfort, and strength. I was proud to serve as their spiritual guide, a man rooted deeply in the traditions and teachings I believed without question. But beneath that proud exterior, cracks began to form, tiny fissures at first, barely noticeable. I started wrestling with questions I'd never dared ask aloud. Why did bad things happen to good people? Why did I lose my wife to illness despite our prayers? Why did so many in my congregation suffer while my sermons felt like empty words bouncing off walls? The Bible passages I'd preached from suddenly seemed distant, irrelevant, even cruel. It was like standing on a foundation I'd always trusted only to find it shaking beneath my feet. At first, I tried to ignore these doubts. I doubled down on my duties, burying myself in church activities and community service, hoping the busyness would drown out the nagging voice inside me. I kept preaching, kept praying, but the fire inside was waning. My heart grew heavy with a silent despair I dared not share. Nights became long and restless. I found myself questioning my own faith more than once, but fear and pride kept me from confessing it to anyone, least of all my congregation. The turning point came quietly, unexpectedly. It was a cold autumn evening, and I was alone in my study, surrounded by dusty books and fading notes from sermons past. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp casting long shadows on the walls. I sat at my desk, hands trembling, staring at the cross hanging above my fireplace, the very symbol of hope I once cherished. "I don't understand anymore," I whispered into the silence. "If you are there, why have you abandoned me?" The words hung in the air, unanswered, echoing my deepest fears. That night, for the first time in decades, I stopped praying. I felt utterly alone, abandoned, not just by God, but by the faith that once defined me. The sermons I'd crafted with passion felt hollow, the scriptures like a foreign language. My soul was paralyzed by doubt and regret. In the weeks that followed, my spiritual decline accelerated. I stopped attending church services, avoided fellowship, and retreated into a dark cocoon of skepticism. The man who once preached hope became consumed by despair. My identity crumbled, and with it, the vibrant faith I had once held. Yet, I did not know then that my fall was not the end. It was the beginning of a journey that would force me to confront every shadow in my soul, a journey that would bring me face to face with the Jesus I thought I had lost forever, and with a mercy more profound than I could have ever imagined. That night, after weeks of growing emptiness, my body betrayed me. The stress, the grief, the internal torment all converged in a sudden, merciless heart attack. It struck without warning, a crushing weight on my chest, breath caught like a storm raging inside me. I collapsed, the world blurring into shadows, sounds muffled as though underwater. The faces of those I had preached to, the prayers I once spoke with fervor, flashed before me like flickering images on a cracked screen. I was slipping away from this life, from everything I knew, into a silence so vast it was terrifying. I was dead, or so it seemed. But death was not a final curtain. Instead, it was the beginning of a profound awakening. As my physical form lay motionless, I found myself floating weightless, free from the bounds of flesh and time. Around me, the world I had known vanished like smoke on the wind. The sterile walls of the hospital faded, replaced by an endless void, dark and vast. For what felt like eternity, I drifted there, lost in a silence so absolute it threatened to consume me. It was not peaceful. It was empty, cold, a desolation deeper than any earthly sorrow. My heart, once full of anger and doubt, now beat no longer, but my consciousness remains a flickering ember amid the darkness. Then, amidst that void, a flicker of light appeared. Small at first, like a distant star, pulsing gently with a warmth that seemed almost alien in the cold emptiness. Drawn to it, I moved, though I had no limbs to guide me, only the will to follow. The light grew steadily, filling the void with hues of gold and white that touched the edges of my being. And then I saw him, Not as the preacher's Jesus, cloaked in familiar images, but as a radiant presence so overwhelming it shattered every doubt I had ever held. His eyes held the weight of eternity, fierce and tender, full of judgment, yet brimming with unfathomable mercy. I fell before him not in fear, but in recognition. In that moment, I knew the truth I had fled for so long. This was the God I had abandoned, the one whose love never left me, even when I turned my back. But standing before him, raw and broken, was not a place of comfort. It was a place of reckoning. He spoke not with words, but with a power that shook my very soul, confronting me with every sin, every doubt, every failure. And I cried out not in defiance, but in regret. "Jesus, I lost you. I walked away. I am sorry." His response was both a balm and a challenge. "It is not too late. Come back." In that profound moment, I realized that my fall from faith was not the end, but a painful passage through darkness toward redemption. The road ahead would be difficult, but his hand was extended, ready to guide me back into the light. As I knelt before him, the floodgates of my soul burst open. Decades of pain, doubt, bitterness, and regret crashed through me in waves. I wept not just for my own failings, but for the people I had led astray, the prayers I had left unanswered, and the faith I had shattered in my own heart. Jesus did not turn away. His gaze penetrated every hidden corner of my being, exposing every lie I told myself, and every moment I had chosen to walk away. But his eyes were not full of anger. They were filled with an overwhelming sorrow and compassion deeper than the oceans. He spoke softly, yet with infinite authority. "My child, why did you abandon the path I laid before you? Why did you let the shadows blind your heart?" I stammered, trying to explain the hurt, the betrayal, the unanswered cries for help that I couldn't reconcile with my belief in a loving God. But words failed me. He already knew. The silence between us was laden with truth. Then he reached out his hand. "Come back," he said. "It is not too late." In that moment, a fierce battle waged inside me between despair and hope, condemnation and grace. The weight of my failures threatened to drag me into darkness, but his mercy was a lifeline, pulling me back. I wanted to stay in that place of raw vulnerability, to bask in his light, but he gently urged me forward. "You must return," he said. "There is work to be done. Your story broken and redeemed will heal others." Though my soul trembled with fear and humility, I reached for his hand. And as I grasped it, a surge of warmth and peace flooded me, a promise of renewal beyond anything I had ever known. Jesus led me beyond the immediate presence of his mercy, guiding me to a vision of something familiar yet transformed. Before me stood a vast church, not a grand cathedral with marble pillars and gold, but a humble, weathered place filled with imperfect, broken people. The walls bore cracks, the windows were stained, yet light streamed through, in colors so vivid they seemed alive. Inside, the congregation was not composed of perfect saints, but of real people. Weary pastors like me burdened by doubt, congregants wrestling with grief and sin, lost souls longing for hope, and children laughing amid the ruins. There was pain in their eyes, but also resilience, love, and an unyielding desire to belong. Jesus spoke softly, "This is my church. It is not perfect, nor will it ever be. It is made of flawed people who choose to follow me despite their brokenness." I saw faces of those I had judged harshly or ignored people I had failed to love fully in my ministry. Their pain was palpable, yet they remained steadfast in their faith, holding tightly to grace. The vision revealed that faith is not the absence of doubt or failure, but the choice to persist and love amidst it all. I understood that my fall did not remove me from this family, but that I was called back to rebuild, to heal, and to lead with newfound honesty. Jesus turned to me and said, "You will return to them, not as the perfect pastor, but as a witness of my mercy." The weight of this calling pressed on my soul, but it was tempered with the fierce hope that comes from knowing you are deeply loved, even in your brokenness. Standing there before the vision of the imperfect, struggling church, Jesus looked deeply into my heart and offered me a choice, a decision that would define everything that followed. I could remain in the peace of his presence, where pain and doubt could no longer reach me. Or I could return to the world I had once fled, carrying the burden of my failures and the hope of renewal. The thought of returning terrified me. I feared judgment, rejection, and the shame that clung to my soul like a second skin. How could I face my congregation, who looked to me for strength? How could I admit to them and to myself that I had fallen so far? Jesus' voice cut through the storm of fear inside me. With honesty and humility, your story will heal more than your sermons ever did. I realized then that the raw truth of my journey, the doubt, the fall, the redemption was not a weakness but a gift, a bridge to others who suffered silently in their own struggles. My heart trembled, but I reached out and took his hand. A surge of peace flooded me, not the peace of perfection, but the peace of surrender. I was ready to face the uncertain road ahead. Jesus smiled gently and said, "Go now. Your journey is just beginning." I was pulled back toward life, leaving behind the radiant light but carrying within me a fire that would not be extinguished. My eyes fluttered open to the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room, the beeping machines a stark contrast to the stillness I had just left. I was alive. Somehow, against all odds, my heart was beating again, slow and fragile, but real. The rush of oxygen filled my lungs, painful and new, and the faces of doctors and nurses swam into focus, strangers to me, yet the keepers of my unexpected return. But inside, everything had shifted. The man who woke that day was not the same who had fallen. I carried the weight and wonder of what I had seen, the presence of Jesus, the vision of his imperfect but beloved church, and the call to come back. The doubts I had lived with did not vanish overnight, but they no longer ruled me. The days following were a whirlwind of recovery. Physically and spiritually, I wrestled with the fragility of my body and the newfound strength of my faith. Sharing my experience was difficult. Some questioned my sanity, others doubted my sincerity. But I knew that honesty was the path to healing, both mine and that of those who would hear my story. Slowly, I began to speak openly about my fall from faith, the darkness that had enveloped me, and the mercy that reached into my despair to pull me back. I found that vulnerability opened doors, connecting me to others grappling with doubt and pain. Together, we discovered a deeper, more authentic faith. This second chance was a gift, one I could no longer waste. I was called not just to preach, but to live a faith marked by humility, grace, and relentless hope. The journey ahead was daunting, but the love that saved me was stronger than my fears. The road to rebuilding my faith was neither quick nor easy. Many days, the shadows of doubt still whispered, and the wounds from my spiritual fall still ached. I realized faith is not the absence of questions, but the courage to live with them. I learned to welcome my doubts, to wrestle with them honestly instead of hiding or ignoring them. I sought fellowship with others who struggled, pastors and believers who had walked through seasons of darkness and emerged with a faith tempered by fire. We shared stories, scripture, prayers, and tears. I discovered that vulnerability and authenticity are the heartbeats of a vibrant faith community. My sermons changed. They were no longer polished speeches, but raw, heartfelt messages born from struggle and grace. I spoke of brokenness, forgiveness, hope, and the relentless pursuit of God's love, despite life's trials. Some in my congregation resisted the change, longing for certainty and simplicity. But many embraced this deeper, more honest faith. I saw people come alive in the tension of faith and doubt, healed not by perfection, but by grace. This rebuilding was a daily surrender, a lifelong journey. But with each step, I found strength in God's steadfast love, hope in his promises, and peace in his presence. I was learning what it truly meant to live as a redeemed, restored servant. If you're listening to my story, if your faith has faltered, if doubt has taken root, if pain and regret weigh heavy, know this: you are not alone. I was once a pastor who lost his way, who turned from God in my darkest hour. But God's mercy found me. His love never abandoned me, even when I walked through the shadows. Jesus is waiting for you. Your doubts don't disqualify you from his grace. Your failures don't define your worth. Come as you are, broken, questioning, searching, and he will meet you there. It is never too late to return. No matter how far you've fallen, his arms remain open wide. Your story of brokenness can become a testimony of redemption. Your pain can be the seed of hope for others. Hold on, keep seeking. Cry out his name when you are ready. He hears you, he loves you, and he will restore you beyond your greatest fears. This is the God I serve, the God who brought me back from the brink. May my journey remind you that faith is a journey, not a destination. And with Jesus, every step forward is a step home.